the latest hour on death. So I love you forever. Huh? What does that mean?
Forever and ever.
Pardon?
Forever and ever.
Forever and ever. In that moment it feels like that, doesn't it? So totally not in touch with reality in that moment, right? And I'm not saying there's something wrong with saying it's a nice thing to say, but
It's a lie. Let's be real.
but it reinforces the sense of like, oh, it's gonna last. Things are gonna last.
Someone said something similar. Teacher said when you light a candle, that its light, even after the candle goes on, it actually continues forever in world physics. Like the light spreads throughout the universe like infinitely. So you can say love forever in a certain meaning.
Future life.
But love doesn't go out, it's a state of mind. And if you die, then the love for that person, maybe it's disrupted. Maybe you meet them again and you love them again. Okay, but in the meantime...
And this time love is also continue. Past life.
No, but it's like, you love this person for who they are right now, this person, and this person is never going to be the same, and I'm not going to be the same. So when I say I love you forever, it's not like, once I'm a cow and I meet you in the... as like my female partner, I love you again, that's different. That's not what it feels like, right? It feels like we're going to be the same and going to go on like that. Just saying the feeling we have within us, it's like, it's going to go on. And with physics, that's like a light, okay, but this is something, it's a state of mind versus something physical, and I don't even know, I mean, it seems maybe it goes on, but maybe it doesn't. How do we know, right?
I don't know.
It's a nice idea. And of course, consciousness goes on forever. Consciousness in general continues on. Everything physical continues on. But just not in the same way. There's a difference. There's nothing that is physical can be destroyed. It will continue to be physical. Continue in a certain form. Nothing mental can be destroyed. It will continue on in the mental form.
So now you contradict.
I don't contradict.
This love is mental thing that you This is right.
No. I said this table will continue forever as a table.
No, it will
Okay. So my consciousness goes on forever, but my love, that experience for a particular person, that doesn't go on forever, does it?
But if I know about a future lives,
Yes.
and then I promise to love someone forever and ever, wishing to carry, like meeting my teachers and the Dharma and so on. It has some merits, I think.
It has some merits, but then when you're born, you still don't come out of the womb and go, oops, I love this in this person. Right? It's gone for that time being.
What is the status of memory? Let's say you're not with that person anymore, you're sitting around, but you're remembering the love you had.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Nice.
When we think memory, remember when I thought, my cousin can't be dead, because she appears so clearly to my mind. Very interesting, right, in terms of memory. Actually, it's just an image of something that is past. But actually, memory also reinforces the sense of things are still being there. Right? So memory can be, of course, it's very helpful, but because of our misapprehension, it adds to our sense of a solid, unchanging reality. Right?
Yeshima, I still don't understand the second meaning of Bnei verse 8.
I didn't talk about the second meaning. So I'll do this now. Good cue to get back. Okay, everything is real, as in like things. So therefore, the Buddha taught everything is real in the sense that all impermanent things, basically, he didn't teach their impermanent, ever-changing, momentary nature, but that they go out of existence in a particular form at some point, in general, like the ordinary things around us. Then he taught everything is not real, saying that change things change momentarily. He went a little further. He said not only do they end in their present form at some point, but not only that, but also things are not real in the sense that they change all the time, that they're momentary. So he introduced that. Then he introduced both real and not real. Okay, so from one perspective that are real, from one perspective we can talk of them as being there, as being I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. Being real as in like from a mistaken perspective, they're real. From a non-mistaken perspective, they're unreal. Kind of changing moment by moment. They seem solid, seem to be the same from moment by moment, so they seem to be real, but in actuality they are not. Okay? And they're neither real nor real means, well, both permanent and impermanent things, whatever exists, lacks inherent existence. Does that make sense? So first he says, just impermanent things around us, one day they go out of existence in their present form. Okay. Then, everything is not real. He said everything is changing moment by moment. He's already taking away the sense of reality. They're real from one perspective, if you mistakenly perceive them, but in actuality, from the point of view of your understanding, they're unreal. But you could also say they're real in like from moment to moment you keep calling this a table, right? So because you call it that, you can still impute table, 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 but in actuality each moment it is not the same table. Okay? And then lastly, whether real or unreal, whatever there is, whichever object there is, so changing moment by moment, being labeled as a continuum, nothing is inherently this, that, and the other. So neither real or unreal means whatever exists, changing, not changing, lacks inherent existence. Right? So in a way that also shows the process of leading to suchness, the process of how you get to suchness. You get introduced to those ideas. And if someone hears about emptiness right from the beginning, they'll be very confused. But impermanence is the way to understand it better. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You said that for the first one, everything is real, that things are permanent but ending.
No, things not permanent. The Buddha didn't say that permanent. He said that he didn't stress their momentariness, but said, for instance, this table. He didn't stress that the table changes moment by moment, but one day.
Impermanence, like when it's a bite, and then it disappears.
No, it's not even from the philosophical system. I don't think it's from the point of view of the philosophical systems as such. Just teaching, introducing the Dharma in general. But it could be also, of course, from the point of view of the Vaibhashika. So what Shaha is mentioning, he says that actually, when we say something comes into existence, right? Something has come into existence. It remains for some time and it goes out of existence. Usually we think of it as in like a gradual process, right? First something comes into existence, then it remains, it endures for some time and it goes out of existence. But that is a very coarse way of looking at things. It doesn't really happen on a momentary level. So, but there are some, like the Vaibhashika, who say this is a function, this is an activity of having come into existence, remaining for some time, and then going out of existence. Okay? So for them that's a gradual process, but in actuality, in the higher schools, it would say each moment something has come into existence, in that moment it endures, and in that moment it goes out of existence again. So those three characteristics, having arisen, abiding, remaining or enduring, and disintegrating, happen simultaneously. Right? They actually happen on a momentary level, come into existence, in that moment abiding, but also going out of existence. So it's actually so that would be the unreal. So initially it seems to be, but I don't think it refers to the tenets per se. You can apply it to the tenets, but just introducing, not everything stays around. Okay, it actually doesn't stay around even for a moment. Everything is changing all the time. And then, from a mistaken perspective, it seems to be real, but actually it's not. And in actuality, nothing exists inherently. Does that make sense?
There's do you think like lamas or...
Can we read the question to the end?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. I just want to take clarification because I really want to finish the text.
Yeah.
So we've done the text and we're getting there. But please don't forget your question. Okay. All right. And then it says the next point, and so this is verse 8. Hopefully this is clear now. So in terms... Yes, please. Yes.
Different statement than the one in verse 6.
A different statement than in verse 6. Yes, in verse 6 he talks more about the self. Here's about permanence, impermanence leading to selflessness. right? How the Buddha actually taught there is a self. Literally said there is the same, like as you said, like this is a self. So some he said there's no self. Now there's the emphasis more on phenomena other than the self, also other things, as in like their impermanence. First it's more the emphasis on the self, because it's like examination of the self and phenomena. That's the names chapter. So initially more emphasis on the self, then also on mind.
Self in the person. So.
Yes. Self of person. And so then you have emptiness has 5 characteristics. Number 1 is not dependent on another person, which actually needs to be explained. Not dependent on another would be like what? Emptiness doesn't depend on something else. It's not dependently arisen. No. It says you cannot realize emptiness merely by someone telling you about it. Okay? Emptiness, someone tells you about it, but that is just the very first step. If just someone tells you about it and you don't really meditate on it, no way you can understand it. This is very different to other religions. Once in Christianity, I remember I read something online. It said, the proof why Jesus was the Son of God. I thought, wow, the proof. I want to hear the proof. So I went right on the website. What is the proof? The Bible says so. Right? And I was like, what? So, I mean, the Christian Bible, the part that the Christians accept. So the Bible says so. Yeah, well, that's not proof. Buddhism is not proof. Yes. Because the Buddha says so, that's not proof.
Yes, many times. Many times you have various proofs, and one of them is written in the Dharma, or you check the Buddha, and the Buddha says so.
No, but that's not the proof. That's just the one indication. It's not a proof. That's not seen as a proof. A proof, no. But a proof is a correct reason. A correct reason that establishes something. That establishes incontrovertibly. For instance, you don't say sound is impermanent because the Buddha said so. Or the subject, the seat, it doesn't exist inherently because the Buddha said so. You said because it exists is a dependently arisen phenomenon. Or sound is impermanent because it's product. Pardon?
But part of the reasoning of past and present life.
Oh, not that the Buddha said so. Yes. Not that the Buddha said so. Not that the Buddha said so. Oh my God, that's never. You can never come to an understanding of that.
We should do the next
Even
course
the
next
Dalai
year.
Lama, said, if scientists will prove there is no next life,
Yes.
I will tell all Buddhists to neglect.
If the Buddha, what she's saying is like the Dalai is that if science has disproven something, that is in not just past and future life, anything, if they incontrovertibly prove that in Buddhism that what the Buddha said is not true, we get rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so for instance, there are kind of minor explanations of how this planet, what it looks like,
Mount Meru.
with Mount Meru, etc.
Yeah, right.
Although there is some explanation that in terms of some beings, their perception of things is different than ourselves. But anyway, that's a whole different story. But in general, according to some of the explanation that our planet Earth looks like that, no. But this homeless said no, it has been disproven, we don't need to take it on. So certain things are culturally determined, no, we don't need to take them on. And if something has been disproven, so even though, anyway, never mind, that goes too much in a discussion, you know what I'm saying. So therefore, nothing, we do when we debate, sometimes say, because it says such and such, right, for the sake of debate. But that doesn't mean that you get an understanding on the basis of that. That's why in the second chapter there are a lot of reasonings on past and future lives. But, as I said, they're only really effective when you become more mindful of your own mind, when you understand the nature of your own mind better. Then you go, oh yeah, that from my own experience, I can tell. This is how my mind acts, this is how it works. So the more you meditate on your own mind, the more you get an understanding of your own mind. You know, like, we may think, why don't I have knowledge of my own mind? That's bizarre. How much more knowledge could I have? But I have friends, for instance, who give people treatment through like a massage. They wouldn't say massage, they call it something different, but it's actually a kind of massage. And they're really good. They're really good at what they do. And so one friend of mine, she can feel right away when there's a blockage. Okay? So she has a perception of my arm that I just cannot
Energy.
She says like she feels certain things. For me, it's just a good old arm, right? Cold or warm or maybe rough skin or not. That's all I notice, right? But so because she's been doing this for so many years, she notices things that we don't notice. Okay? We're scientists, when they look at atoms, etc., they're so familiar with the object, so used to looking and analyzing, they see things we would never see. Doctors, anyone. So it makes sense, therefore, that a meditator, watching the own mind, gets to know things about their own mind that we just don't know, because we haven't looked. Okay? So, past and future lives right now, talking about it, for us it's a bit like talking about blue to a blind person. Like the Buddha telling us that. So actually the reasoning, if you talk about blue exists because of this, that and the other, if you see blue you totally, you can, if you don't have any sense, then there's no, of course there's no sense that the mind continues. So therefore it cannot, even if something can be proven, okay, it doesn't mean it can be proven to you at this point in time. To a kindergarten student, you cannot prove certain scientific things unless they get there, have that knowledge. Then, having that, then it can be proven. So, if people therefore say, no, I read the Pramanavartika, it didn't prove anything. Well, not to you, right? So if you have a certain flexibility of mind, then things suddenly, and it takes time. Right? Okay. But there's never, because the Buddha said so. I mean, you can use that as a reason, but that does not help you to realize something. Yeah. Okay, but emptiness anyway has 5 characteristics. The first one is not dependent on another person, which needs to be, this is just a short explanation, of course, for the sake of the verse, it's very much shortened. It means it cannot be realized merely by depending on another person. It is at peace. So things are without inherent existence, free from the mental fabrication, so things actually lack inherent existence. Not fabricated by mental fabrication means actually they're inexpressible. So when we say something, you need a mental fabric. First you use a word, like you have a motivation to say something, and then you say so. Okay, you have a thought to say so. Then you say this, that, and the other. And then as a result of that, the other person has a thought of the object. Does that make sense? So when I use a word, when I say, I mean, you don't notice, as I'm talking, it's really bizarre. It shows there's really no real I. As I'm talking, sometimes I'm saying things, and I'm thinking, where does that come from? It's almost like it comes spontaneous, because I'm not aware of the thought that gives rise to it. It's too subtle. I'm only aware of coarser thoughts. So, but because there's no controlling I, it's just different awarenesses that as I'm talking, these awarenesses, or at least the awareness that is responsible for me talking, one thought of the other arises. But it's quick, it's very quick. In the spur of the moment, it's very quick. As you keep talking, you get into a flow. It's something bizarre. Sometimes when I start a lesson, I'm like, get a word out. It takes forever. I keep like changing words. I just can't get it out. I can't get my mind together. And then I keep talking, and then I go into flow. Right? So once I'm in a flow, I look at myself and I go, where does that just come from? Oh, I wasn't even thinking of that. It just comes out. So there's just a mind, an idea pops up. It just does its thing. Yeah. Okay? So there was a thought. It gave rise to a word. And then you take it in or not. Maybe thinking of something else, so you miss parts of what I say. Of course, I know what it's like when I listen to someone, I miss parts. You're not attentive for a few moments, etc. But if you are attentive, you take it in, and there's a thought for a moment. Okay? So there's always a mental fabrication when we talk to each other. We don't blame talking to each other. Don't stop doing that. It's just because how our thoughts work. Okay? So there's a strong connection between words and thought. Words and thought, they're connected to each other in as a thought gives rise to a word, the cause for a word, and then when it's taken in, it gives rise to another thought. Okay, when you register the word. Right? Okay. Anyway, we'll get a little bit more to this. Not conceptualized, without distinctions, so not conceptualized, it's actually beyond thought. Not conceptualized means beyond thought. Without distinctions, actually, on the level of lack of inherent existence, the lack of inherent existence of this table or the lack of inherent existence of this cup, there's no real difference, it just cannot be found. So just from the point of view of that characteristic, of course it's the lack of inherent existence of this, and the basis is different, but from the point of view of that characteristic, they're not really different. Alright, so those are the 5 characteristics of emptiness.
Distinctions as the word.
Okay. Alright, which part? So not dependent on another person is clear, right? At peace is clear. The fifth, okay. Without distinctions. So from within emptiness, if you take to mind the lack of inherent existence of the table, or the lack of inherent existence of this cup, there's no real distinction. It's just the absence of inherent existence. So in general. But then also when you realize emptiness directly, you realize the emptiness of all phenomena. Though you don't know all phenomena, but you can know the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena, because nothing conventional appears to your mind. There's just the absence of inherent existence. So in that way, you know the absence of inherent existence of anything, but in that way. So there's no distinction. It's not like different things appear to you, there's only the lack of inherent existence, like water being poured into water. So there's no distinction. Although when we think of phenomena, they seem to be very separate from each other when we think about them, but that's because of our inherent sense of their separation, their difference, right? Different things. But once we know the lack of inherent existence of things, there's no distinction between them. Okay? They're all of one nature in that sense. Okay? So no distinction, not dependent on another person, at peace, not fabricated by mental fabrications, not conceptualized, so inexpressible, not conceptualized, not object of thought, without distinctions. That is the characteristic of suchness.
You said these are the 5 characteristics. Is that like a formula known from other places, these 5 characteristics? Or? The way you refer to it seems like
it seems like a set.
The set, it's not...
I mean, they all sound familiar, but in that particular combination, I don't know.
Did you say again about the peace?
Peace, so peace, the word pacification, Nagarjuna keeps using the word pacification, kind of means not inherently existent, so pacified. Pacified as like free from perceived, like in the very beginning, peaceful. So nirvana is the state beyond mental fabrication, mentally fabricating inherent existence. So here, it's beyond mental fabrication of inherent existence in the sense that it doesn't exist inherently. It lacks inherent existence. So emptiness itself is peace, as in like it lacks inherent existence. So emptiness itself, you need to depend on another person to realize it. And peace means, in this context, and again, in other contexts, he also uses the word peace as in like, not peace of nirvana, but the lack of inherent existence. And so the commentaries say, at peace here means not lacking inherent existence.
All these 5 characteristics, they're actually defining not so much emptiness itself, but the definition of emptiness, isn't it?
No. The definition of emptiness is a conventional phenomenon. The definition of emptiness is a conventional phenomenon. If you say the definition itself, and then if you take what the definition is, that and emptiness are the same. The definition of vase, if you say the definition of vase, that's a definition, right? But then if you take the actual object, or like momentary and impermanent are the same. Momentary is that the definition we give to impermanent. Impermanent and the definition are the same. So emptiness and its definition are the same thing, right? They're in other words, they're equivalent, synonymous. So if that's the characteristic of the definition, not the definition as in like what the definition refers to, the actual thing, then same as emptiness. So if it's the characteristic of the definition of emptiness, it must be the definition of emptiness. Right? So the whatever is true for momentary is true for impermanent. because momentary is the definition of impermanent. So whatever is the characteristic of momentary must be the characteristic of
It's
impermanent.
of the same nature, yeah, but it's like a different emphasis. Because it seems like what he's emphasizing is that the way you get at the point at emptiness cannot be dependent on somebody else and cannot be done by. It's not so much. I mean, you can say many things about emptiness or suchness or whatever, you know. It seems like this verse actually mainly is talking about how we get there. So you don't get there by relying on somebody else.
No. That's what I said. You need to add the words. It is that which is realized, not merely in dependence on another person. It's not just talking about the process. It is that which is realized not merely by depending on another person. It is that which is at peace. It is that which is not fabricated. So it is that which is inexpressible. It is that which is not conceptualized. But of course you're right in terms of saying that about emptiness. It describes the process, how you get there. Is that which... Okay? And of course you could argue this is true for a lot of things. This is true for... Actually, this is like a whole different debate. Like, isn't that also true for anything? I cannot know was without someone just telling me was. I have to see it. Someone telling me about it is not enough. Taste of hummus, unless I eat it. How can I know? Alright? But that's a whole different debate. But here, I don't know, of course, what Nagarjuna's intent was, but in terms of the commentaries, they say it is that which is dependent, realizing it is dependent on another person. And so yes, it definitely shows how to get there, but then the next, at peace, not fabricated, that specifically says it's characteristic, without distinction, etc. Okay, so that is the characteristic or the characteristics of suchness. Then the next is the relationship of cause and effect. So previously, we spoke more of the self doesn't exist in relation to its aggregates, for instance, that which is of one nature with it. But then what about cause and effect? The first chapter is all about cause and effect. Really difficult, it's not easy. When you think about cause and effect, anyway, we say the cause is a cause in dependence on its effect. The effect is an effect in dependence on the cause. But at the time of the cause, there's no effect. At the time of the effect, there's no cause. And it's something very funny that we always struggle with. When we hear phenomena are merely imputed, okay, everything exists because it's merely labeled. Right away, we get into that time thing. What about a planet we have never seen? Right? What about this thing that no one has ever seen? If there's no one to label it, doesn't it exist? Okay? Very typical question. Don't ask it now. I ask it, so you're not allowed to ask it. Right? I'm answering it right away. I'm addressing this right now. It's very typical. So the example is the 5th Dalai Lama. During the time of the 5th Dalai Lama, he was not called Dalai Lama. Only later on, at the time of the 5th Dalai Lama, I'm still not sure it was at the time of the 5th Dalai Lama. Was it really the 5th Dalai Lama? The 3rd. Right? I kind of, yeah. Somehow I also, there wasn't, anyway, at the time of one of the later Dalai Lamas, the 3rd, I also seem to think it was the 3rd, Sonam Gyatso, I don't know. Anyway, so, at the time of one of the later Dalai Lamas, they could trace back the previous incarnations, they had recognized, and they could trace them back all the way to the time of the 1st, at the time of Lama Tsongkhapa. During the time of Lama Tsongkhapa, there was this great master called Gyalpa Drup. And so he had been recognized officially as the reincarnation of now the 3rd. Okay, so then they retrospectively called him Dalai Lama. So he's known as the 1st Dalai Lama. Is he the 1st Dalai Lama? Yes. Was he called 1st Dalai Lama at the time? No. Was he the 1st Dalai Lama at the time? Yes. He was not called that at the time, but he was that. So we get caught up in time. We think, oh, if right now no one is calling something up in space, I don't know, the planet blah blah, then it's not the planet blah blah, because right now no one is calling it that. But that would be like saying, wow, at the time of the seed is not the cause of the sprout, because